right. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us on Psych Your Way to Success. I'm your host, Claire Bike, and with me as always is
Heather Fife.
Awesome. And today we are excited to have Maegan Thompson with us. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, heck. It's thanks for, so many things. We're going to get into that. So if you could, what I should probably lead with is our topic today, which is a lot for me to try to remember, but I'm going to do my absolute best. So it is conflict resolution in the workplace for millennial women. And
yes.
It is a specific and niche topic, but it is something that maybe I think if everybody, regardless of who and where you are in the world right now, can appreciate the perspective being taken, or maybe
absolutely,
I don't know, get in touch with that side, or understand where millennial women are coming from.
Absolutely,
lots of different aspects. Yeah. So real quick, Maegan, if you don't mind giving us your elevator speech of who you are, your background. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time on a podcast, so I'm like really excited. Super excited. Yes. No, it's great. So I am a purchasing manager by trade. I have primarily worked in the manufacturing sector, in construction specifically, construction materials. And Claire and I met about, what has it been? How long is COVID? Like 4 years ago almost? And we met in manufacturing,
2020, right?
Oh God, yep. 2020. I had forgotten 2020.
2020.
Blocked it out.
Yeah.
So
everybody did. It's okay.
It can exist. So primarily, that I'm purchasing manager, with a lot of experience in the construction materials sector, and just really excited to be here.
Awesome. And I would like to point out, Maegan is underselling herself. For those that know, Maegan, they can understand and appreciate the world that she comes from and how well she is at it. The ability, and we talk about how, like in IO Psych, like there is no such thing as multitasking. There's just doing multiple things slightly well. Maegan actually has epitomized the ability to do multiple things incredibly well. So
thank you.
Just a gem to have at work. But
thank you.
It didn't always start out that way for her and I.
No, it did not. Claire and I were Claire and I were very two alpha females, just button heads during COVID, remotely, thank God, remotely. It was an interesting start, but I love Claire, and she's my person, and I love her so much that she married me and my husband this last year. So it's been a fantastic friendship.
Love this.
It was an absolute honor. But I will say I didn't even meet, because oddly my job started on the 16th of March, or it was the 16th. It was the day that we shut down. It was the official day that everything shut down. That was my first day on the job. And so I never got to meet Maegan until she was allowed back in the office, and I was in the office every day. And it was 7 months or 6 months into the job.
It was a really long time. And I think that you and I had both heard things about each other and had drawn our own conclusions. And then when we met in the middle, we're like, wait a second. She's awesome.
None of that.
I mean, I thought you were awesome. I don't know if you thought I was awesome, but I thought you were awesome.
Oh, no. I think it was obvious by the time I came into your office, and I was like, we're having a chat. And I shut the door.
Let's talk.
So I will say that conflict resolution is that's why it brings it so full circle for me when it comes to you, is because we had so much going on under the surface. And I would love it if you wouldn't mind. Heather, have you had that kind of relationship with people where you're just bubbling under the surface about them, and you're maybe feeling or giving off comments that are not overt, but definitely are just, I think one of the comments even I said to Maegan was, that's really awesome. Thanks for that information, but it's not my job. I think that's yours, or something like that. Yeah.
Well, and I think, yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, like we talked about a little bit, we've talked about this a couple of times, is that we're in a unique situation right now where we have multiple different generations in the workforce.
Yep.
And, you know, you have everyone from, you know, and even not just generationally, but you have everyone from go-get-ems to I'm going to act my wage and that's the end of it. And then everything in between, right? And so I don't think that there's a right or a wrong either way. And I think that there's a lot of negative connotation with both of those different subsets of employees. But yeah, so, you know, it's really important in today's culture, especially with COVID and, you know, you have remote employees and you have in-person employees to just really be able to play the whole field and be able to adapt to whatever your audience is, regardless of either a generation or remote versus in person and so on and so forth.
I love that act your wage. I don't
Yeah,
know if
I've
I've
never
quite
heard
heard
that.
it that way. And I like
Yep.
it resonated instantly the second I heard it. That's
Yeah.
impressive. I know a lot of people that act their wage. I'm like, I think
Right.
I tried to
Right.
enact that, but it doesn't stick sometimes for me.
It's not easy. It's not easy. And
No.
especially, you know, we're that really like, you know, we've talked about it before. We're kind of that bridge generation between, you know, the older generation, which is, you know, give a company your all, you're going to get promoted, you're going to make more money, you're going to retire,
Totally.
versus the younger generation where employment is almost, I don't want to say disposable because that feels really extreme, but they're always looking to the next thing, you know? So we're kind of that bridge in between. You know, we grew up knowing that work ethic was really important and that it was important to have loyalty to your company, but then we've kind of transitioned into, wait a second, do we really need to tolerate some of these things, and really kind of growing and setting more intentional and healthy boundaries and really sustaining those. So, you know, it's an interesting influx. We're very much a bridge generation, I think, and it's really cool. I'm glad to be a part of it. It's not always easy, but I'm glad to be a part of it.
It isn't. And I think one of the things, because you and I discussed it a lot, and Heather, I'd love to get your hot take on it, because I keep interjecting myself. Each generation has such an incredible skill set to add to the workforce, right? Like, I think that is
Absolutely
the thing that we lose sight on the most. But I think the hardest thing, and this is what you wanted to speak into the most, was what conflict looks like and how the resolution comes about when you have a Gen Z versus a traditionalist working in the same place at the same time. Like,
absolutely.
Heather, do you have a generation, to both of you, do you have a generation that you find yourself more in conflict with than any other?
You know what? I honestly don't. And I actually have feelings towards putting people in those kinds of boxes, because I don't necessarily totally agree with them, because I think some of these things we're talking about right now, I saw back in 96 when I had my first job, and people were talking about these same things. I do think something that has changed in the workplace is the whole COVID time period. And sometimes I feel like people forget about how difficult that was, that 2 years we were isolated at home. A lot of people didn't speak. Like, I think even when I think of my kids and doing their junior year and their sophomore year of high school at home, and like all of those social skills that they 100% missed out on. And so like, and those people are the people that are starting to come back into the workplace. People had to be innovative during that time to make money. And so I think we put these labels on things when really it's kind of a reflection of what happened in those years and how hard it is to get back. I mean, I would even say for myself, like, it's weird getting out of the house and doing things sometimes, you know, because I lived so much at home. You know what I mean? Like, and I thrived. I loved it. You know what I mean?
I loved it. Absolutely.
I was like, I was super lucky that I was able to be home with my kids and that they are
Absolutely.
self-starters and they're able to get things and they each had a computer. Like I was very lucky. So I'm
Right.
saying that from a very privileged standpoint.
Of course.
But I notice even for myself, it's hard to like be like, okay, I'm gonna go out and get a job now. Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it
No,
like
and I think
terrifies me.
absolutely. And I think you actually brought up a really great point. One of the things that I love, there's a guy on my team now. I'm not going to say his name. I'm not going to say who I work for. But I really look up to this gentleman because one of the things during COVID and then now, he speaks to it a lot. He's an older generation gentleman. And that's one of the things that he considers as a huge success story for him was he went from in person every day, 7 to 5, every single day. That was his identity. And
Yep.
now with COVID, he had to step back and he had to say, okay, how do I adapt? That's what you said, Heather. How do I adapt to this new normal? And, I think we all thought that COVID was going to be temporary and we were eventually going to go back to the normal. But what we've seen is that we've actually established a new normal. And it's been really awesome to see some of these older generations or people who maybe preferred a more in-person environment adapt to a more remote environment and be able to add really unique
Mm-hmm.
value in that way because they are able to add unique perspective. And I think that, again, being that we have such a diverse workforce right now, that's one of the huge benefits of that is being able to see that huge swing in different value adds due to different perspectives. So I completely agree. And I love, frankly, I'll tell you right now, I know COVID was a tragedy. I have great memories of COVID. I didn't put on pants. I didn't leave my house. I had grocery delivery. It was fantastic. I worked remotely. So I think there are some things that, I don't want to see go away from COVID, but I do think if we're looking at positives, there are a lot of different perspectives that came out of COVID, and it did challenge people to be able to add value in different ways that weren't just face-to-face interaction. And it's fantastic. And we see that to this day because even still, we have, before I went on maternity leave, I was wall-to-wall meetings. I work 100% remotely currently, but I was wall-to-wall meetings every single day. And when I was before COVID, that would have been so weird for me is to have just 8 hours of web meetings where I had to try and persuade people without, obviously a hands talker, without, the use of my hands and seeing people face to face. And so it's been really cool to see the adaptability of different people across COVID. COVID definitely was a challenge, but I think it did bring some good things to our current climate.
No, it definitely did. But I guess with all of that, as our topic is conflict resolution, do you feel that it's harder to have conflict resolution or real, I don't even know, like real conversations remotely?
Virtually.
Like, I just think, I think that's an interesting thing because talking to somebody on the phone, even FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it is, it's a very different feeling. And then when you're in a room with somebody, it's like, oh, that's who I've been talking to this whole time. Like,
Brand new challenge.
It is, right?
So
I
real
don't know.
quick, before you answer that, I wanted to check in. Do you have a generation that you find yourself a little bit more in conflict with?
Myself?
Yes.
I would say that I find the younger generations a little bit easier to interact with in the current climate, just because of, I myself have tried to really establish boundaries and do a little bit more like a structured workplace that the younger generation appreciates. And I've found myself gravitating less towards the, busted loyalty and all of that. And I'm very loyal to my current employer. I'm very thankful to have a job and all of those things, of course. But I find the newer generations to be refreshing because that's what I wanted when I was younger, but I didn't feel like I had the permission or the ability to do so. So I would say, which is ironic because how old am I, Claire? I'm going to be 38. So I'm 37 right now. And
You're still
I find
super
it,
young.
no, I feel like I'm so old, but no, I do find myself gravitating to the younger generations only from a place of admiration because I love their ability to set boundaries. I love their ability to have that work-life balance. And that's something that I myself want to be able to take away from and emulate.
That's funny. And in such an inspiring way to look at it, because I find that as generations level up, I don't like say age, but as you
No, but
level
level
up
up
in
is
this
great.
life, right?
Hmm.
Like as we level up in this world, and the younger generations are actually disliked because there's a lack of understanding. There's
Hmm.
there's almost a moment of jealousy that you
Yeah.
have about, because I know initially I was like, why do you get to ask for all the things that you want and have this confidence? Like, how
Yeah.
dare you not earn it the way I did, slugging
Yeah.
through all of the crap that I've
Hmm.
been through. And it,
Yep.
like, I just remember having, and then checking myself in my gut and being like, oh, wait a minute. Am I mad at them or am I mad at me?
Right. Am I actually mad at myself because I did not make those
Yeah,
opportunities for
because I
myself?
didn't.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So to jump back to Heather's question, like the virtual aspect, what do you think
Hmm.
are some of the challenges that you're facing and maybe some of the resolutions?
Absolutely. Well, I think one thing that
Yeah.
became very apparent when we went to a primarily remote environment was the importance of written communication, right? So that's one thing that I myself saw a lot of conflict, and this was entirely my fault. But I am a person that, and Claire can attest to this, when I have a thought, it comes out of my face. There's very little filter. I've worked on it the very best I can. But I do the same via email. And I've almost had to stop and take a step back and say, wait a second, because the thing about written communication is that you can't read tone. You can't read intention. You can't read vibes. You can't read body language. And so I think that for myself, that was something that I really needed to check myself on because, you type out a 5-word email and you just had a thought in your brain, but then when the recipient has it, they don't have all of that context that you had when you were writing it. And it can read as really snarky or negative or whatever the case may be. And so
Short.
that was something
Yeah.
short, yeah, or snotty. I am a very direct type of person, but I am even more direct in written form. And so I really had to kind of dial that back a little bit. And so that was one thing that I have found has been very challenging, as far as, I can't just go to the person next to me's office and be like, hey, quick combo. Even if it's the same 5 words that I would have said via email, the context and the connotation and the vibe is very different when you are seeing someone in person versus if they were actually reading it and having to draw those conclusions for themselves. So that is certainly one of the challenges. And then obviously, working remotely, I think so many people work remotely these days, and you're battling a myriad of technical issues, time zone issues, scheduling conflicts, and so on and so forth. Whereas before, if you were working in person, you just pop by somebody's office, have a quick combo, and that's the end of it. But
Especially
we're
settling arguments.
absolutely. And whereas now we're so, I don't think that I have a single peer that's not wall to wall meeting blocks every single day. And you're looking at your calendar at the end of the day for tomorrow. And you're like, when am I going to have time to pee or make a cup of coffee? Or, you know what I mean?
And
And so,
you don't want to be that Friday afternoon guy that's making a meeting at 4 o'clock
no,
on a Friday.
no,
Like,
no, you do not. So I think that Heather, I think that you did bring up a very good point in that I think remote work has opened a lot of doors for a lot of different people, but I definitely think that it did present a lot of challenges that, none of us were prepared for because how many of us worked primarily remote before COVID? Very few. So, we really had to adapt to that new normal and be able to really leverage some of the skills that maybe, we had in the past, but we didn't really have to flex them. Like I knew that I was a really strong written communicator, but I never really had to use it unless I was writing a contract or writing a proposal or anything like that, or telling somebody very kindly to take a hike via email. I didn't have to do that very often because I would just go to their office and I would tell them that. So it's been a
and
unique
she
challenge,
would.
but
Yeah.
I would.
She would.
100%.
Sometimes it was me.
It was a couple of times.
Yeah,
It was
it was
Claire,
good, though.
but you know what? It's good. It's
Yeah.
good.
I earned every moment of it. Let me just put that out there.
Well, so I think that brings up an interesting point, though, is that like healthy conflict and healthy dialogue
Yeah.
is something that I do miss from pre-COVID times. I mean, those, I don't want to call them, what's that called? Oh, God, I've lost the word.
The pre-COVID times?
Pre-COVID times, when you have conflict, debating. That healthy debating of, merits of different points of view. I know it's a very elementary word, but different, debating of healthy, different points of view. I do miss that sometimes because I find a lot of value in seeing other people's points of view. I don't necessarily, I love to be right. I'm not going to lie because that would be false. But I'm not a person that feels strongly enough about really anything that I can't be swayed to one point of view or another by a well-founded argument. And especially I feel like in the workplace, when you do work, particularly in a male-dominated workforce, I think it's really important to be able to see different points of view and be able to set your perspective aside and say, okay, so why does this person, male or female, think this certain way? And if they can come to you with a well-educated, well-articulated argument, then that can be very valuable, because just because you think one way doesn't mean that somebody else isn't equally right. So that is one thing I miss pre-COVID.
Okay, I'm going to chime in for 2 seconds because you said something that like really triggered something in me where I was like, the people I admired most in the workplace oftentimes were people that would sit and listen to me, even if I was like strong and wrong, right? And they'd just be like, okay. And it's almost like that yes, but type of move where they're like, yeah, but what about this? Right. And they didn't present it to me like you're wrong or cut me off or, insert and force their opinion on me. And that was something that was huge to me. And I've tried to adopt that. And when you and I worked together, obviously had not worked very well at that. So I wasn't an expert or anything. I was still telling everybody like, you're wrong. And I'm right if I felt like that was the case.
See, and I don't,
go for it.
I don't really think that I didn't ever have that perception of you, really. My perception of you was, wow, this is a very strong female personality who has very clearly worked with a male-dominated subsect of humans.
That's true.
And she knows her shit. I mean, I don't work in health and safety. And for me, I wasn't the expert on anything that you were speaking to, but I guess I just didn't perceive you that way.
Well, let me ask this. Yeah. What was the changing thing between your relationship? Because clearly I'm not going to say these are difficult personalities.
They are difficult personalities.
Yeah.
I think everybody has somebody at their office that you are dealing with a difficult personality, but you guys changed it. And I don't know.
Okay, so that was the end of part 1. As we talk about conflict resolution with Maegan, we will be back shortly with part 2. See you next week. Thanks again.